Chapter 24, 10 The Eve of the Storm 1. The great general of the Bright Moon Empire, Gu Cheng, had already been largely consumed by spiritual corruption. His eyes were bloodshot, his muscles were stiff, and his breathing was rapid like that of a wild beast. If he is not rescued soon, he will completely turn into a mindless monster. He's still alive. Zhang Yi was somewhat surprised. The Moon people would find it difficult to withstand mental pollution in this place. Whether it was Gu Cheng, Dao Lan who wanted to kill him, or the mysterious assassin, they all entered with the determination to die. Fortunately, Zhang Yi and his group only stayed in the Dark Sun Forest for one day, and the lonely city had not yet been completely eroded. Zhang Yi glanced at Yang Xinxin. Xinxin, can you save him? Xian nodded. I can't remove the mental pollution from him. But wouldn't it be better to apply a new layer of rules on top of that mental pollution so that he remembers his identity, memories, and beliefs? For example, in home decoration, mental pollution is like splashing ink on a white wall. Instead of scraping off the stained part, Yang Xinxin added another layer of white paint to cover the ink stain. However, in terms of effect, they all look the same. Yang Xinxin slowly raised her right hand, and the enormous figure of the fallen puppet appeared behind her. He drew his bow and the arrow, imbued with meme concepts, struck Gu Cheng directly in the body. This method of rule-based coverage gradually strips away the chaos and mental toxins from the isolated city. The process lasted a full minute, and Gu Cheng finally recovered from his near-death state. His eyes gradually cleared, and he remembered everything. He gasped for breath and knelt down. When he saw Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin, he knew perfectly well that the two of them had saved him. Gu Cheng's eyes held a mixture of gratitude and complexity. Thank you for saving me, Your Excellency, Gu Cheng said with difficulty. However, how did you end up here? Did you find the spark? Zhang Yi simply waved his hand. The mission is complete, and your mission should end as well. Next, we will take the meteor to all parts of the moon. Gu Cheng's heart skipped a beat, and he looked up at the young girl in the distance. She was looking at the night sky with clear, pure eyes, seemingly having completely forgotten the blood and fire she had just experienced. Gu Cheng opened his mouth, but said nothing, only slowly lowered his head. He understood that he was no longer the key figure and that the real hope rested on this spark girl. After leaving the forest, the world suddenly opened up. High in the sky, two enormous spaceships hovered between the clouds. Their black hulls resembled sharp swords, and cold lights shone down from their bellies, like the eyes of judgment in the sky, watching Zhang Yi and his companions closely. The surveillance forces of the Radiant Moon Empire and the Dark Moon Empire had already laid a tight net, making it impossible for them to leave this small planet. Fengu looked up, his eyes dark and his breathing growing heavier beneath his cloak. We can't escape. Wherever we go, we're being watched. This is the cage of fate. We're destined to be trapped and die on this desolate moon. His voice was filled with pain and despair, each word sounding as if it were being torn apart. He couldn't accept that despite his desperate efforts to protect the meteor, he still couldn't escape the chains of fate. However, he must now face reality. In reality, this escape was doomed to fail from the very beginning. This is why the Night Witch is unwilling to take action again. Shumliuxing gently pulled him back, her eyes bright, filled with an unprecedentedly innocent smile. Burning Bones, I'm so happy. Her voice was as gentle as a spring breeze. Because I can finally see. I can see the night sky, the mountains and rivers, you, and I can also see Chaos and the other humans from Earth. Before, everything was dark, and I could only rely on touch and imagination to perceive the world, but now, I can really see clearly. Burning Bones' body trembled, and he slowly turned his head, his gaze falling into the girl's eyes. He wanted to say something, but his throat tightened. Shumliuxing opened his arms as if to embrace the beauty of the entire moon. So, what if I can't leave here? As long as I can travel to every part of the moon and see the mountains, rivers, and sky of this planet, I will be very satisfied. Her smile was like light, illuminating the darkest corner of Fengu's heart. Zhang Yi smiled slightly, but did not interrupt. He knew that this purity and courage were the very meaning of the spark. Their journey began from there. The group left the dark sun forest, traversed the polluted wasteland, climbed snow-covered mountains, and crossed a lake reflecting the glow of 2 moons. Throughout the journey, Shunliuxing kept asking, "Chaos, are there mountains like this on Earth? Are they even higher than this?" Zhang Yi nodded. Yes. The highest peak on Earth is called Mount Everest, which is even more majestic than the mountains you see. It is covered with snow all year round, and the sea of clouds rolls around it, like a stairway to the heavens. Shunliuxing's eyes lit up, and he clasped his hands together in front of his chest, as if depicting a scene in his mind. What about lakes? Are there lakes on Earth? King Arthur replied with a smile. Of course. The lakes on Earth are much larger than here, some as boundless as the sea. When the sun shines, the lake's surface glistens like a giant mirror, reflecting the clouds and mountains in the sky. Meteor listened intently, her eyes sparkling with longing and curiosity. She suddenly whispered, "If only one day I could see Earth with my own eyes." Burning Bones lowered his head, his voice hoarse. "It's my fault if I were stronger." Shunliuxing shook his head, his gaze resolute. "No, Burning Bones. Even if it's just for a moment, I will hold on to hope, because hope itself is more beautiful than despair." Their footsteps continued. At each place he arrived at, Shunliuxing would gaze at it for a long time, as if trying to etch all the colors of the world into his eyes. She touched the cold stone wall with her hands and pressed her face against the grass to feel the scent of the earth. She picked up a stone by the lake and earnestly asked Zhang Yi if it was a pebble that also exists on Earth. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded. Yes, and there are more and rounder ones than this. Tears welled in the girl's eyes, yet she still smiled. Burning Bones watched all of this silently from the sidelines. His hand remained tightly gripping the bone scimitar, as if only in this way could he suppress the surging pain and unease in his chest. He knew very well that this short journey could not change his fate, but for the sake of Shunliuxing's smile, he was willing to fight against fate once again. High in the sky, 2 enormous spaceships continued to follow, like divine punishment that could fall at any moment. Zhang Yi looked up at them, his eyes cold. Deep down, however, he was pondering. The surveillance by the bright moon and dark moon wouldn't be without reason. It must signify an impending new upheaval. The journey of the meteor was destined to be anything but peaceful. But all of this may just be the calm before the storm. Chapter 24:11 The Eve of the Storm 2. The sky remained dark, and the wind whistled through the mountains like a low sob. Zhang Yi stopped and looked at the girl gazing at the sky ahead. A bright light shone in Shunliuxing's eyes, the pure joy of seeing the world for the first time. But Zhang Yi knew in his heart that this joy was destined to be short-lived. He took a deep breath, waved his hand gently, and the shadow space slowly opened. Black ripples spread out, like a door leading to another world. "Kur, do me a favor." Zhang Yi told Zhou Kur his plan. "Didn't you study psychology? Talk to this girl. That ugly guy next to her has a gloomy vibe. She only has 1 day to see the world, so we should leave her with some good memories." Zhou Kur had always felt sorry for this poor girl, and after hearing Zhang Yi's words, she immediately nodded in understanding. "I understand. Don't worry, I will spend a lot of time with her and try my best to leave her with the most beautiful memories." From the shadows, a beautiful woman slowly emerged. Zhou Kur emerged from the shadows, her aura incongruous with the cold, moonlit landscape, yet bringing a sense of warmth. When she saw the fleeting meteor, a look of pity flashed in her eyes, which was then followed by a smile. "Hello, my name is Zhou Kur. I'm from Earth. Can I keep you company?" Shunliuxing paused for a moment, then smiled and nodded. I am called Shunliuxing." Zhang Yi stood not far from the two of them and introduced her, saying, "She is my girlfriend." At this point, he glanced at Fengu and gave him a warning look. He wasn't worried that Fengu might suddenly attack and take Zhou Kur hostage. After all, with his current strength, killing Fingu was just a matter of a thought. Zhang Yi knew that this day belonged to the meteor, and all Zhou Ke could do was let the girl experience more about this world. The two traveled to many places on the moon. When they were tired, they sat on the rocks in the valley, where the wind howled and the moonlight was bright. Zhou Ke patiently recounted the story of Earth. There are 4 seasons on Earth. In spring, hundreds of flowers bloom and the air is filled with their fragrance. In summer, the trees are lush and green, and children play in the river. In autumn, there are golden rice fields and falling maple leaves. In winter, it snows and everything is white, as if the whole world is dressed in a wedding gown. Shun Liuxing's eyes widened, her breathing becoming rapid. The 4 seasons are so beautiful. The moon only has cold nights and gray-white skies. I didn't know it could have such changes. Zhou Ke smiled gently, took out a small projector from the shadow space, and after turning it on, a light screen appeared in the night sky. The screen displays scenes of Earth. The azure sea, rolling mountains, cities with towering skyscrapers, streets illuminated by dazzling lights at night, and the laughter and dancing of people during festivals. Shun Liuxing held his breath, completely immersed in the moment. Those are movies and TV shows from Earth. Zhou Ke explained softly. These are stories that people have created themselves, turning their dreams, emotions, and hopes into images. Although they are fictional, there is so much beauty in them. In one scene, a young girl runs through the schoolyard, carrying a backpack and smiling brightly. In another, lovers hold hands under the sunset, making eternal vows. Shun Liuxing's eyes gradually reddened. She reached out her hand, as if wanting to touch the image. So, the world can be so beautiful. Even if it's just fake, I want to keep watching. Zhou Ke took her hand and smiled. It's true, a shooting star. These stories are recorded because people are willing to believe. As long as there is love and hope in our hearts, beauty is real. Shun Liuxing's tears finally fell. She smiled and cried at the same time, her voice trembling. Thank you, Ke. It turns out I really did have the chance to see what this world looks like. On the other side, Zhang Yi and Fingu stood side by side at the other end of the valley. The night wind howled, and the black cloak on Fingu's body fluttered, just like his restless mind. Zhang Yi spoke calmly. Fingu, I want to ask you a question. Fingu glanced at him coldly, but remained silent. Knowing it's all in vain, Zhang Yi's tone was calm, yet sharp as a sword. Why do you still persist? Why risk your life to protect an ending already destined for destruction? You should know that after doing that kind of thing, neither the Dark Moon Empire nor the Radiant Moon Empire will let you off the hook, right? After things are over here, you'll probably only have one option left, to go to the Dark Sun Forest and accompany the Night Witch. Burning Bone remained silent for a moment, then clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. After a long while, he finally let out a cold snort. You don't understand at all. His voice was deep, carrying a sense of restraint and stubbornness. Even if the end is destruction, even if all my efforts turn to dust, I will fight with all my might to protect her. Because that is the meaning of my life. Zhang Yi looked at him with deep eyes and did not argue further. He could feel the weight in Burning Bone's words. It was an unwavering conviction that even death could not shake. As night deepened, time slowly passed. Finally, the light of dawn shone through the edge of the valley, illuminating the figures of the girl and the burning bones. Shun Liuxing leaned on Zhou Ke's shoulder, his eyes filled with satisfaction and affection. Is the day over? She asked softly. Zhang Yi stepped forward and nodded. Yes, the agreed time has arrived. We must set off. Shun Liuxing took a deep breath, tried hard to hold back her tears, and forced a smile. She took Fingu's hand and looked at Zhang Yi. Thank you, Chaos. Thank you for letting my eyes truly see the world. Zhou Ke gently hugged her, leaving her with a tender smile, burying the regret deep in her eyes, and silently returned to Zhang Yi's side. Zhang Yi said calmly, No need to thank me, we all have our own things to do. He continued, Come on, Meteor. Now it's your turn to fulfill your mission. Guqing also came over. As the Grand General of the Radiant Moon Empire, he would escort Shunliuxing there. Fungu clenched his fists tightly, staring at Zhang Yi and Guqing with eyes that seemed to want to devour them. Don't stare at me like that. It won't do you any good, Zhang Yi said with a smile. I promised the Night Witch I wouldn't harm you, but... He looked up at the sky. The warships of the Radiant Moon Empire had been keeping a close eye on their movements. They won't go easy on you. Fungu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, I want to go with you. He looked at the shooting star and said, Wherever you go, I will always be by your side. Chapter 24, 12 The Eve of the Storm, 3. The spaceship's engines roared, and its metal hull gleamed coldly in the frigid moon wind. It was its Songyuan clan spaceship that Liu Karen had personally modified. The ship had smooth lines, and its surface was covered with energy runes and shield nodes. At this moment, it hovered steadily at the edge of the dark sun forest, and the hatch slowly opened to welcome Zhang Yi and his team. Burning Bones stared intently at the spaceship, his eyes filled with struggle and complexity. His ugly face was slightly contorted with pain, and his cloak fluttered in the wind. Shunliuxing stood quietly beside him, gently holding his hands with both of hers, her gaze tender yet firm. Are you really going to send me to the Radiant Moon Empire? The girl's voice was soft, yet it was like a clear spring piercing through the dead silence of the night. Burning Bone paused, gritted his teeth, and slowly nodded. I don't want to go back to the dark sun forest. There is only despair and escape. Even if I know the end is death, I will stay with you until the very end. Shunliuxing's eyes were slightly moist, but she still managed to smile. Zhang Yi watched them quietly, his gaze cold yet gentle. He slowly said, All right, then you can come with me. As long as you don't hinder me from completing my mission, I won't stop you. After saying that, he was the first to board the spaceship. The moment the hatch closed, a deafening hum echoed out. The spaceship accelerated sharply, breaking through the low-gravity dust and fog layer of the moon, and sped towards the Moon Empire. The cabin was brightly lit, and the neat metal floor reflected a faint blue sheen. The meteor sat quietly by the porthole, its eyes fixed on the passing lunar sea and mountains. Her eyes sparkled. It was the first time she had seen the planet clearly with her own eyes. Fungu knelt beside her, his face always lowered, as if unwilling to let others see his appearance. But every now and then, Meteor would turn back, tug at his hand, and make him look up and gaze out the window with her. Tsk tisk. Brian wagged his tail and lay lazily on the seat, letting out an inappropriate grumbling from his dog mouth. This atmosphere, it's like the set of some cheap romantic comedy. Chaos. Are you sure we're on a mission to save the moon and not watching some post-apocalyptic romance? Upon hearing this, Shunliuxing paused slightly, a blush creeping onto her face. Burning Bones glared fiercely at Brian, his eyes blazing with fury. Brian didn't care at all. Instead, he shrugged his hairy shoulders, licked his nose, and lazily added, Don't glare at me, man. If it weren't for Chaos's mercy, you'd be 2 meters tall on your grave by now. Burning Bones' finger joints made a cracking sound, as if he was about to go berserk at any moment. Fatty Sue immediately pounced on him, grabbing the dead dog's thick neck while yelling at Fungu. Calm down. Calm down, brothers. If we start fighting on the spaceship, the air pressure will explode, and we'll all turn into frozen corpses in a vacuum. This was obviously just a joke, but it did dissipate a lot of Burning Bones' anger. Professor Da Vinci stared at the scene with half-open eyes, his expression like a dead fish, and snorted. If this guy can't resist chopping up Brian, we can save some dog food. Hey, you old idiot. Fatty Sue immediately jumped up and down. How can you say that? Brian is our nose radar. We can only track Burning Bone and Meteor without him. Where are we going to find a replacement if we lose him? Brian snorted smugly, his tail wagging high. Did you hear that? I'm irreplaceable. Professor Leonardo da Vinci rolled his eyes, reached out, and pulled out a strange mechanical sphere, placing it on the table with a thud. I built a super electronic sniffer 3 days ago, which is 100 times more accurate than yours. If it weren't for the fact that you can make sarcastic remarks to relieve boredom, I would have thrown you out of the hatch long ago. Brian was stunned for a moment, then immediately bristled. You're talking nonsense. Even a machine can't compare to my keen sense of smell. Chaos. You be the judge. Zhang Yi was leaning back in his chair with his eyes closed, resting. Hearing the voice, he merely opened his eyes slightly and lazily replied, "Why don't you two find a place to have a solo match? I'll be the referee." The cabin fell silent instantly. Fatty Sue seized the opportunity to burst into laughter, clutching his stomach and nearly rolling off his chair. Ha 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 ha. Serves them right. A dog and an old man. Both were completely subdued by the prison warden. Oh my, I'm dying of laughter. Professor Da Vinci's deadpan eyes rolled, and he suddenly blurted out, "Fatty, if you laugh again, I'll give you a gastrectomy. I guarantee you'll lose 20 pounds in a month." Fatty Sue immediately wilted, clutching his stomach and waving his hands repeatedly. No, no, no. Professor, I was wrong, okay? This fat body of mine is the last barrier against the cold of the moon. The cabin erupted in laughter. Shunliexing covered her mouth and couldn't help but laugh, tears welling in her eyes. That smile wasn't from finding joy in hardship, but because for the first time, she felt human warmth, outside of despair and fate. Actually, both Fatty Sue and Brian were just trying to liven things up. After all, it is hard to feel happy about sending an innocent girl to her death out of helplessness. Even Zhang Yi couldn't handle this matter with a smile. Fenggu stared at her blankly, his eyes filled with complex emotions. The girl he was desperately trying to protect was now genuinely smiling because of these people from Earth. The spaceship traversed the desolate lunar sea, gradually approaching the border of the radiant moon empire. Through the porthole, one can see towering white city walls and a massive energy dome in the distance, the defensive system of the capital of the radiant moon empire. The laughter and chatter in the cabin gradually subsided, replaced by a somber atmosphere. Zhang Yi slowly opened his eyes, his gaze calm. We've arrived at the radiant moon empire. I will now hand you over to the Silver Moon Guards of the Radiant Moon Empire, but Miss Meteor, you should be more familiar with this place than I am. Fenggu suddenly looked up, his fists clenched tightly. Shunliexing reached out and grabbed him, her gaze gentle yet firm. No matter the outcome, I want to see it with my own eyes. Even if it's just for this moment, it will be worth it in this life. Come to think of it, I've grown up in the Radiant Moon Empire, and I've never really seen this place properly before. She went to the porthole and looked at the image of the enormous, technologically created silver moon floating in the sky. And that enormous, radiant kingdom, a hint of moist ecstasy flickered in his eyes. I only realized today how beautiful the place where I grew up is. A brief silence fell over the cabin. Brian clicked his tongue, suddenly breaking the deadlock. I really can't stand this atmosphere anymore. It's like some kind of doomsday declaration. Chaos. Can't I get off the ship and find some bones to gnaw on? I don't want to starve to death at the gates of the Radiant Moon Empire. Its paw rubbed its eyes. There was a stone in its eye. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.